There are places in every city that seem to dissolve from memory, sinking into fog and weeds until even the street names vanish from everyday speech. On the outskirts of Houston, Texas, one such neighborhood huddled behind a veil of damp morning mist. It was a graveyard of broken windows, sunken porches, and the persistent, distant hum of the city's pulse, a place where hope seemed to have packed up and moved on years ago. Olivia Brooks cut through the heavy silence, her boots swishing through knee-high weeds. She was 34, but the tired slump in her shoulders made her look older, especially on mornings like this. Her job as a property inspector was usually more paperwork than drama, just ticking boxes for the city, condemned, boarded up, sign the form, move on. But this morning felt different, prickling at her skin even as she juggled her clipboard and phone. Ahead, a condemned two-story house slouched under the weight of neglect. The porch sagged dangerously, battered by countless storms. As Olivia approached, she heard it, a sound so faint she almost dismissed it as her imagination. A scratch, a whimper, barely louder than the whispering breeze. She hesitated. Her orders were simple: assess, report, don't get involved. But the sound called again, fragile and desperate, and Olivia found herself stepping closer despite her better judgment. She crouched low, heart thumping, and peered under the rotted boards. The beam from her flashlight flickered across darkness, landing on a pair of wild, haunted eyes. A German shepherd, emaciated, fur dull and patchy, ribs protruding from her sides, cowered in the shadows, her body half curled around something Olivia couldn't see. The dog didn't snarl or bark. She just stared, eyes wide with a mix of terror and something fierce, almost pleading. In that instant, Olivia's professional detachment cracked. She saw more than a stray. She saw a survivor clinging to a scrap of hope. "Hey girl," Olivia whispered, her voice barely a breath. "It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." A whimper answered her, softer this time. As Olivia's eyes adjusted, she spotted movement behind the dog, a faint, rhythmic shuddering. Puppies. Olivia counted 4 tiny shapes, their fur filthy, one so small and still that Olivia's heart twisted painfully. She swallowed hard. Her supervisor was calling, his name flashing on her screen, but Olivia muted the phone. She couldn't look away. Every instinct screamed that she should leave this mess to animal control. She wasn't supposed to be a rescuer, but those eyes, full of hollow hunger and fierce devotion, pinned her in place. She rummaged through her bag for a granola bar and broke it into crumbs, pushing them close to the porch's edge. The mother dog, Mara Olivia would later name her, didn't budge. Instead, she nudged the food toward her puppies, every muscle taut with protective fear. Olivia's hands shook as she watched, torn between her orders and the sudden ache to help. In her mind, she weighed the risk. If she interfered, she could lose her job. If she didn't, she might be the last person to see these animals alive. A car door slammed somewhere down the block, jolting Olivia back. She gathered her things and stood, promising herself she'd report the dogs, follow the rules. But as she walked away, she glanced back. Mara was still watching, eyes glowing in the gloom, silent and resolute. The smallest puppy's chest barely moved, clutching a faded red sock between its paws. That night, Olivia's dreams tangled with reality. She kept seeing the porch, the dog, the puppies. The image of the weakest pup, its tiny body trembling, haunted her even after she woke. The city's procedures were clear. Don't get attached. Don't meddle. Just report. But every time Olivia tried to reason with herself, she remembered Mara's eyes, the fragile faith in that one silent gaze. She imagined how cold it must be under that porch, how scared those puppies must feel, and the memory gnawed at her conscience. By morning, Olivia had made up her mind. She stopped by a convenience store on the way to work, buying a cheap box, some blankets, and a carton of warm broth. The supervisor's texts pinged her phone, impatient for her inspection report, but Olivia ignored them. She parked in the same spot, heart hammering as she carried her supplies toward the condemned house. The fog was thinner today, sunlight struggling through. Maybe, Olivia hoped, that was a sign. Kneeling by the porch again, she called softly, coaxing Mara with the smell of broth. The dog watched her warily, torn between suspicion and exhaustion. Olivia set the food down and waited, her breath fogging in the cold air. This time, Mara didn't just stare. Inch by inch, she crept closer, nose twitching, ribs quivering with every step. She stopped just shy of Olivia's outstretched hand, glancing back at her puppies. The tiniest one whimpered weakly, still clinging to the sock. "I'm not leaving you here," Olivia murmured, voice thick. "I promise." She reached forward, slow and careful. Mara didn't snap or retreat. Instead, she pressed herself lower, surrendering to the moment, trusting Olivia just enough to let her pick up the smallest pup. Olivia cradled the puppy to her chest, wrapping it in a blanket, whispering reassurances as she hurried back to her car. In her rearview mirror, Olivia caught Mara's eyes one last time, filled with fear, hope, and the silent plea of a mother who had nothing left but faith in a stranger. The road ahead was uncertain, but Olivia knew she'd crossed a line she couldn't uncross. Duty had become something more, the courage to care when no one else would. Olivia's hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly, her knuckles whitened as she sped through the early Houston traffic. The fragile bundle on the passenger seat, barely a pound of trembling fur and bones, was wrapped in her old college sweatshirt, the red sock still pressed tight in its mouth. Every stoplight felt like a punishment. Olivia couldn't shake the memory of Mara's eyes, the silent, desperate hope she'd seen there, as she had gently lifted the weakest puppy from beneath the porch. She could still feel the weight of Mara's trust, and her own gnawing uncertainty, settling heavy in her chest. When she reached the vet, the lobby was nearly empty. Olivia hurried inside, her voice quivering as she explained the situation to the tech at the desk. "Found under a porch, barely moving. Please just help her." The technician's face softened as she looked at the tiny German Shepherd pup, and within minutes they rushed the puppy behind closed doors. Olivia stood in the waiting room, her fingers tracing the rough edges of her clipboard, her mind racing with what she'd just done. She'd left Mara and 3 more puppies behind, exposed, hungry, possibly just as close to death as this little one. What kind of rescuer saves only one? Was this hope or just a delay of the inevitable? She called her supervisor, voice carefully steady. "Just running behind. I got held up by a property with more hazards than expected. I'll email my report later." As she hung up, she caught her reflection in the glass doors. Rumpled, anxious, a strand of hair escaping from her bun. It wasn't the face of someone following the rules. After what felt like hours, the vet emerged, tired but gentle. "She's not out of the woods, but she's a fighter," he said, handing Olivia a slip of paper with an overnight prognosis and a warning. "It's not just malnutrition. She's dehydrated, cold, and very weak. But sometimes these little ones surprise you." Olivia thanked him, swallowing tears. She wanted to believe in surprises. She left the clinic and drove back through the city's waking chaos, past boarded-up shops and neighborhoods that flickered between hope and despair. Her mind was a carousel of doubts. Had she abandoned Mara by taking just one pup? Could Mara protect the others? Would animal control arrive and treat them as just another problem to clear away? Every question was a stone in her gut. By the time Olivia pulled into her own driveway, the sun had climbed higher. She carried the puppy's red sock in her pocket, like a promise, a thread connecting her to Mara's family. In the kitchen, she prepared a care package: crackers, a can of tuna, bottled water, and her last clean towel, then stared at her phone. She could just report the situation, file her inspection, and move on. Let someone else deal with it. That's what everyone else had done. But that night, lying in bed, Olivia saw Mara's face again, the bruised dignity of a mother who'd lost everything but refused to give up. Sleep never came. Instead, Olivia paced the hall, haunted by memories. She remembered her childhood dog, the one she'd rescued from a ditch after a hurricane. How her own mother had told her, "Sometimes you don't choose the rescue. It chooses you." That memory carried her into the next morning, when she gathered her supplies and headed out before dawn. As she parked near the abandoned house, the fog was gone, replaced by the stark clarity of Texas sun. The condemned building looked even lonelier in daylight. Olivia felt exposed, like every neighbor might be watching, judging her for meddling. But she didn't pause. She grabbed the box, the blankets, and the broth, then crept around to the porch. She knelt, heart pounding, and called softly, "Hey, Mara, it's me again." The German shepherd appeared, shoulders hunched, eyes wary but not unfriendly. The remaining 3 puppies stirred, one yipping softly, another crawling over its siblings to get closer to the sunlight. Olivia slid the box closer, pouring warm broth into a bowl and setting it near the edge. Mara sniffed the air, trembling, and then, without a sound, she nudged each puppy forward, one by one. Olivia held her breath, hardly daring to move as the little family inched out from the darkness. The puppy's fur was matted, their movements uncertain, but they responded to the scent of food and the gentle timbre of Olivia's voice. Just as Mara began to lap at the broth, Olivia's phone buzzed again. Her supervisor's number flashed across the screen, demanding attention. Olivia ignored it, her focus unbroken. She watched as Mara, desperate and hungry herself, pushed every morsel toward her puppies. The selflessness of it, the fierce, unspoken love, left Olivia blinking back tears. Suddenly, a car engine roared from down the street, echoing through the hollowed-out block. Mara froze, ears pricked, body rigid. Olivia ducked lower, trying to shield the puppies with her arm. A pickup truck crawled past, the driver's eyes lingering on Olivia for a moment before moving on. The tension hung heavy, a reminder that not everyone wanted these dogs saved. Once the street quieted, Olivia moved quickly. She wrapped the weakest of the 3 remaining puppies in her towel, checking it for signs of illness. Mara didn't flinch. If anything, she seemed relieved, as if passing on her last hope to someone who might just care enough to fight for them. Olivia loaded the puppies into the box, whispered reassurances, and finally reached for Mara. The dog's body shook, torn between fear and trust, but she didn't bolt. Olivia stroked Mara's head, her own heart pounding. "You did good," she murmured. "You kept them alive. Now let me help you too." As Olivia loaded the box into her car, she glanced back one last time. Mara watched from the porch, no longer cowering, just waiting. Olivia knew she'd return for the mother soon. For now, she drove away with 3 more lives cradled in hope, and the faint but growing certainty that some choices, once made, change you forever. Dawn stretched slowly across Houston's suburbs, painting abandoned rooftops in bands of gold and shadow. Olivia's car rolled to a stop beneath the old pecan tree near the condemned house, the early quiet broken only by birdsong and the distant drone of traffic. She paused for a moment, forehead resting on the steering wheel, her nerves jangling with exhaustion and anticipation. The last 2 days had changed her. Duty had become devotion. Logic had given way to something stubborn and tender, a responsibility that burrowed deep in her heart and refused to be ignored. Cradling a grocery bag loaded with supplies, canned dog food, a soft blanket, a battered first aid kit, Olivia made her way through the knee-high grass. The city felt different in the morning, brighter, less haunted by the threat of interruption. The memory of Mara's hollow eyes lingered, reminding Olivia to move slowly, to speak softly, to become a presence that signaled hope and not harm. She knelt by the porch and called, "Mara, it's me." Her voice was a gentle anchor in the shifting quiet. A pause, then a faint shuffle from beneath the porch. Mara's nose appeared first, cautious and twitching, followed by her lean, battered body. Today she didn't slink away. She stood her ground, her posture less desperate, her gaze almost searching, as if weighing the memory of Olivia's kindness against a lifetime of disappointment. The puppies followed, tumbling after their mother, fur still patchy but eyes brighter. The smallest, Scout, the one Olivia had rushed to the vet, wasn't here. But Mara's calmness told Olivia that the reunion had to wait. For now, it was about building trust, one careful moment at a time. Olivia set down the supplies, opened the can of food, and slid it toward the wary dog. Mara hesitated, glancing at her pups, then inched forward, drawn by the scent and the gentle cadence of Olivia's encouragement. The puppies yipped and pawed at the blanket, crawling over each other for their share. For the first time, Mara ate while Olivia watched, her posture stiff but unbroken. The porch, so recently a tomb, became a sanctuary of fragile hope. Sunlight filtered through the slats, casting warm stripes on the peeling paint. The air was thick with the scent of musty wood, wet earth, and canned chicken. Olivia found herself talking to Mara as if to a friend, recounting bits of her day, her fears, her hopes for the little family. The words flowed quietly, mixing with the soft breaths of the dogs and the faint hum of the world waking up. "Tomorrow, I'll bring you a toy," Olivia murmured, her fingers trailing over the frayed blanket. "Maybe something for the little ones to chew." "Would you like that, Mara?" Mara's ears pricked, and for a split second, Olivia imagined she saw a spark of gratitude, a hint of the loyal, loving dog she might have been before all this. It was enough. Olivia's heart surged with cautious optimism. Small victories, she reminded herself. That's how you earned a dog's trust. And maybe how you began to mend your own spirit, too. Later that morning, Olivia called the vet to check on Scout. The puppy was stable, the vet reported, weak but improving. He'd clung to his red sock the whole night, refusing to let go even for his IV. The stubbornness in that little gesture made Olivia smile. "He's a fighter, just like his mama," she said, relief breaking through her tension. Olivia returned to the house every day that week, always at first light. Her presence became a ritual. Cans of food, clean water, and whispered reassurances offered through the slats of the porch. Mara never barked, never growled. Her way of protecting her pups was quiet and vigilant, all trembling muscles and unwavering eyes. Each day, she let Olivia sit a little closer, the line between stranger and friend blurring with every gentle act. On the third morning, as the sun crept higher, Mara allowed Olivia to brush her fingers lightly over her head. The contact was brief, a tremble, a hitch in both their breaths. But for Olivia, it felt monumental. Her eyes prickled with tears she didn't bother to hide. She understood something then. Trust wasn't a gift. It was a process, a mosaic of moments, built from patience, empathy, and the willingness to show up even when it was hard. The world outside seemed oblivious to the transformation unfolding beneath that battered porch. The city's demands persisted. Phone calls, emails, the clamor for paperwork and progress. But for Olivia, her priorities shifted. Every break in her schedule was an excuse to check on Mara and the puppies, to offer a gentle hand, a soft voice, and a promise that they were not forgotten. She learned the rhythms of the little family, how River, the boldest pup, always ate first, pushing his siblings aside with clumsy confidence. How Luna, shy and slender, lingered near her mother, waiting for permission to venture out. Ash, the troublemaker, stole bits of blanket to chew, gnawing at the corners and yelping when Mara nudged him back to safety. These details, small and intimate, knitted Olivia's heart to theirs. One evening, Olivia found herself talking to Mara about her own loneliness. The ache that had settled after her last breakup. The empty apartment that felt less like home every year. She didn't expect answers. She just needed to say it out loud, to let her voice join the quiet pulse of hope under the porch. Mara listened, her eyes dark and soft. She didn't judge or shy away. In her silence, Olivia found comfort, a shared understanding between two souls who knew what it was to feel abandoned and unseen. By the end of the week, Mara allowed Olivia to lift each puppy, checking their bellies for ticks and their paws for cuts. The puppies squirmed and squealed, but Mara only watched, tense but trusting. Olivia's heart soared. She'd become part of their world, not by force, but by the slow, deliberate practice of care. As the city's demands grew louder, Olivia knew the time was coming for a bigger decision, a risk that would test the trust they'd built. But for now, beneath the forgotten porch, hope was alive. Olivia and Mara, each battered in their own way, had found in each other a fragile, precious trust, the first step on a journey neither of them could walk alone. Every morning before dawn, Olivia found herself rising earlier, anticipation buzzing under her skin. The old routine, coffee, quick breakfast, shuffling through paperwork, had been replaced by a new ritual she couldn't have predicted a week ago. Now, her kitchen table was cluttered with supplies for Mara and the puppies. Donated chew toys, cans of food, stacks of fresh towels, and an old quilt she'd found in the attic, still soft despite its faded colors. Driving across Houston's empty streets, Olivia watched the city come alive in slow motion. Joggers pushing strollers, buses lumbering past, sunlight spilling over billboards and empty playgrounds. It was the kind of morning that made hope feel possible, even in a city where neglect and hurry often drowned out the small miracles happening in quiet corners. As she parked beneath the old pecan tree, Olivia noticed that the air around the abandoned house felt subtly changed. Where there had once been only silence and the echo of loss, now there was the faint music of life, a puppy's yip, the thump of a wagging tail against cracked wood, Mara's low rumble of reassurance. She made her way through the grass, her hands full of supplies, her heart unexpectedly light. The porch was bathed in the gentle rays of early sun. Olivia knelt at her usual spot and called softly, "Good morning, Mara." The German shepherd's head appeared almost immediately, eyes brighter, ears pricked not with fear, but with cautious recognition. Olivia saw the faintest flicker of a tail wag, a gesture so subtle that she grinned, clutching it like a personal victory. The puppies, emboldened by days of regular meals and soft words, tumbled over each other to reach her. River, the boldest, was first out, nose sniffing Olivia's sneakers, tiny tail whirling like a propeller. Ash followed, dragging a scrap of old towel behind him as if he was leading a parade. Luna was slower, hanging back at the threshold, her gaze shifting from Olivia to Mara and back again. It was Mara's soft nudge that finally convinced Luna to step into the sunlight, blinking at the world with wide, uncertain eyes. Olivia scattered a few toys, then set out food and water. She sat cross-legged in the grass, staying just out of reach, letting the family come to her in their own time. She watched Mara observe each pup, the way she guided their play and gently corrected their roughhousing. Mara's devotion was silent but absolute. She was always the last to eat, her gaze fixed on her pups until every one of them was satisfied. As the puppies ate and played, Olivia spoke quietly. She told Mara about the first dog she'd ever loved, how her mother had always insisted that dogs listen best to the stories we never say aloud. She confessed her own disappointments, her failed relationships, her fear of loneliness, and the strange comfort she found in this battered porch, with these broken but fiercely loving animals. The words felt strange on her tongue at first, but soon the silence between sentences was as warm and safe as a blanket. Mara listened. Sometimes she inched closer, resting her head on her paws, her eyes never leaving Olivia's face. Other times, she'd sit upright and alert, watching her puppies, but glancing back at Olivia, as if to make sure her new friend was still there. When Olivia held out her hand with a piece of chicken, Mara sniffed cautiously, then, after an eternity, took it gently, her tongue barely grazing Olivia's palm. The trust was hard-won, delicate as spun glass. But it was real. The porch became their meeting ground, a place where past wounds and present hope existed side by side. Olivia noticed small changes every day. Mara's fur was filling in, her ribs less pronounced. The puppies' bellies grew rounder, their barks louder. Luna, once timid, now chased Ash around the yard, ears flying. River, ever the explorer, discovered a gap in the fence and nearly gave Olivia a heart attack before Mara's sharp bark called him back. Some mornings, Olivia brought a book and read aloud. Other times, she just sat in the silence, letting the sound of the puppies play and Mara's quiet breathing fill her up. She realized that she was healing too. Her sense of worth, so battered by years of self-doubt, was beginning to mend. Mara wasn't just learning to trust. She was teaching Olivia how to be present, how to let go of control and let moments unfold as they would. Still, the specter of reality lingered. Olivia knew the demolition order was coming. The city wasn't patient, and abandoned houses didn't stay standing forever. She caught herself watching the street for city trucks, listening for the rattle of chains or the clang of machinery. Each day felt like a borrowed gift, precious and precarious. One afternoon, as Olivia was leaving, Mara followed her all the way to the edge of the porch, the puppies pressed against their mother's legs, watching with wide eyes. Olivia paused, turning to meet Mara's gaze. There was no fear now, only a question, a silent, profound connection that transcended words. Olivia knelt, placed her hand on the porch, and waited. Mara stepped forward, her movement slow but sure. She pressed her muzzle into Olivia's palm, her tail wagging, strong, certain, undeniable. Olivia's breath caught. In that single gesture, every barrier dissolved. She realized they weren't just surviving anymore. They were beginning to hope. That night, Olivia lay awake, replaying every detail. She knew she couldn't save them by herself, that soon she'd have to risk everything to keep Mara and her puppies safe. But for now, she clung to the bonds they'd built in silence, a fragile bridge made stronger each day by love, trust, and the willingness to keep showing up. The first rays of morning sun barely crested the Houston skyline when Olivia's phone shrilled, dragging her out of uneasy sleep. She fumbled for it, squinting at the unfamiliar number. The city office. She pressed accept, bracing herself for what she already suspected. "Miss Brooks, this is the Building Safety Division. Just a heads up, we're moving up the demolition of 3920 Preston Avenue. We need you to finalize your report by noon. Demo crews scheduled for tomorrow morning. Thanks." The call ended before Olivia could respond. Her heart hammered, a sick heat rising up her throat. She leapt out of bed and scrambled to her kitchen, scattering coffee grounds in her rush to throw supplies together. Blankets, dog treats, a sturdy crate she'd borrowed from a neighbor, her old red sweatshirt that still smelled faintly of home. She drove faster than she should have, barely noticing the traffic or the faces staring from bus stops. In her mind, time was running out, not just for Mara and her puppies, but for the delicate trust she'd worked so hard to build. Every bump in the road seemed to jostle the urgency closer to panic. When she reached the abandoned house, the neighborhood was waking up. A pair of boys riding bikes, an elderly man walking a limping dachshund. The condemned house looked almost peaceful, sunlight slanting through the gaps in the fence, dew sparkling on the weeds. But Olivia saw it differently now. Every broken window, every sagging board was a threat. Tomorrow, there would be nothing left but rubble. Olivia hurried across the yard, box and crate banging against her legs, and knelt at her familiar spot beside the porch. "Mara, it's me," she called, her voice tight with urgency. The German shepherd appeared instantly, her eyes locked on Olivia's face, sensing the difference in her energy. Mara's tail didn't wag. She stood poised, protective, as if reading the worry written across Olivia's features. The puppies were there, River chasing a bit of string, Ash gnawing a rubber ball, Luna hiding behind her mother's legs. Olivia laid out a feast of food, but Mara barely sniffed it. The anxiety was contagious. Olivia glanced back at the street, her nerves sparking at every distant engine. She brought out the crate and set it gently near the porch, propping open the door with her foot. She unrolled the old blanket inside, making it as inviting as she could, then opened a can of food and set it just at the entrance. "Mara, honey, listen. We don't have much time. They're coming tomorrow. I have to get you out of here. All of you." Mara studied her, nose twitching, ears pricked. The decision to trust Olivia had been built in tiny increments, shared meals, gentle touches, patient silences. Now, everything depended on whether that trust could stretch one step further. For a long moment, nothing happened. Mara paced, glancing from Olivia to her puppies, her body tense and alert. Olivia's hands shook as she coaxed the puppies closer, scooping them up one by one and placing them inside the crate. River squirmed. Luna whimpered. Ash let out a sharp, indignant yelp. Mara's hackles rose, but she didn't attack or run. She simply watched, vibrating with nerves. Then, as if steeling herself, Mara stepped forward. She poked her head into the crate, sniffed the blanket, and finally, with trembling resolve, climbed in beside her pups. Olivia held her breath as Mara curled around her family, her eyes never leaving Olivia's face. In that instant, all the weeks of cautious progress snapped into a single, powerful moment of surrender. "Thank you," Olivia whispered, fighting tears. She snapped the crate door shut gently, locked it, and loaded the whole family into her car with the care of someone carrying priceless glass. The drive to the shelter was a blur, Olivia's mind a jumble of worst-case scenarios. Would Mara panic and injure herself? Would the puppies cry the whole way? What if the shelter refused to take them all? But as she drove, glancing in the rearview mirror, she saw Mara pressed protectively around her pups, eyes wide but calm. The red sock was clutched in Luna's mouth now, a talisman of hope passed from one sibling to another. At the city shelter, Olivia met Renee, a calm, broad-shouldered woman with years of animal rescue behind her eyes. Renee knelt beside the crate and took in the sight of Mara and her puppies, her expression softening as she saw Luna with the sock, River wagging his tail, Ash barking a high-pitched protest. "You did the right thing," Renee said, her voice quiet but certain. "You probably saved all their lives." The intake process was a whirlwind: forms, signatures, vaccination records. Olivia's hands shook as she wrote her name. She gave every detail she could. How she'd found Mara, the number of puppies, what she'd fed them, every small triumph and every scare. Renee listened, nodding, and gently lifted each puppy out, checking their eyes, ears, and bellies. The shelter was warm and full of sound: dogs barking, volunteers sweeping, children giggling somewhere down the hall. Olivia watched as Mara and her pups were led to a quiet, sunlit kennel lined with clean blankets and bowls of water. Mara hesitated at first, scanning the room for threats, but when she saw her puppies settle into the blankets and begin to play, she relaxed, lowering herself beside them. Scout, the smallest, had returned from the vet the day before. He spotted his family, let out a hoarse little yip, and tumbled toward them, dragging his precious red sock behind him. Mara sniffed him all over, her tail wagging at last, slow, uncertain, but undeniably hopeful. Olivia's chest tightened as she stood at the kennel's edge, hands pressed against the glass. She felt the adrenaline drain away, replaced by a deep, trembling relief. She'd risked everything: her job, her peace of mind, to give this family a chance. As she watched Mara curl around her pups, finally safe, Olivia understood something she'd never realized before. Sometimes, to do the right thing, you have to let go of certainty and trust in the fragile thread of hope. That night, exhausted but content, Olivia fell asleep with her phone on the pillow beside her, waiting for any word from the shelter. In her dreams, Mara and her puppies ran free in a field of wildflowers, sunlight glinting off their fur, the red sock a banner of survival fluttering in the breeze. The world seemed to pause after the whirlwind of the rescue. Olivia's adrenaline had finally faded, replaced by a soft ache in her muscles and a hollow anxiety she couldn't quite name. She spent the night restless, checking her phone for updates from the shelter, imagining 1,000 scenarios, some hopeful, some full of dread. When morning finally arrived, a new sense of anticipation carried her out of bed and into the sunlight. The city shelter sat on the edge of downtown, its red brick walls and chain-link fences surrounded by the din of morning traffic. Inside, the air buzzed with the commotion of barking dogs, yowling cats, and the muffled voices of volunteers beginning their daily rounds. Olivia walked through the glass doors, a container of homemade chicken and rice clutched in her hands, her heart thumping with every step. Renee greeted her with a smile that seemed even warmer than before. "They're settling in," she said, leading Olivia down a corridor lined with kennels. "Mara keeps her eyes on her pups at all times. You can see she's still not quite sure she trusts this place, but she hasn't let anyone down." Olivia nodded, craning her neck to catch her first glimpse of the little family in their new environment. The kennel was clean, blanketed in soft fleece. Mara lay curled in one corner, her body forming a protective wall around her puppies. River gnawed at a plastic bone. Luna batted at a dangling rope toy. Ash wrestled with a towel. In the middle, Scout, returned from the vet and still noticeably smaller, huddled with his cherished red sock, chewing on it gently as though it were a lifeline to the world outside. Mara's eyes tracked Olivia the moment she stepped close. There was wariness there, but also recognition, a flicker of gratitude and relief. When Olivia crouched down and whispered, "Hey, sweet girl, I told you I'd come back." Mara lifted her head and pressed her nose to the bars, letting Olivia scratch her chin through the gap. It was a gesture of acceptance, a small bridge across the gulf of fear and uncertainty. The reunion with Scout was almost silent. Mara sniffed him from head to tail, her tail trembling, then licked his ears and nudged the red sock back into his paws. Olivia what? Heart swelling. Renee wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, muttering, "Happens every time. They know when they're safe again." The next few days passed in a gentle blur. Olivia visited every afternoon, always bringing food and toys, always ready to sit beside the kennel and talk softly. Sometimes she read out loud, letting her voice fill the sterile air with warmth. Mara would watch her, occasionally venturing close enough to nuzzle Olivia's hand or lay her head in her lap. The puppies grew bolder with each visit, River trying to climb the mesh, Ash barking at his reflection in the metal, Luna curling up on Olivia's shoes and falling asleep. The shelter's routine became Olivia's routine. She helped with chores, scrubbing bowls, folding laundry, walking other dogs when the staff was short-handed. But her real purpose was always the same: to be there for Mara and her pups, to remind them that they were not forgotten, that hope had not left them behind. Scout's progress became the heartbeat of those days. At first, he was so frail that Renee worried he might not make it, but with each passing hour he rallied, eating more, moving with greater energy, even managing to bark back when River teased him. Olivia brought him new socks, but he always returned to the old red one, tucking it beneath his chin as he slept. As the family healed, the shelter transformed too. Word spread about Mara's bravery and the puppies' resilience. Staff and volunteers stopped by to watch them play, dropping off extra treats and snapping photos for the shelter's website. "They're going to have people lining up to adopt them," Renee said one afternoon, handing Olivia a cup of coffee. "It's a miracle, really. You don't see that every day." But Olivia's heart twisted at the thought of the family being separated. She watched Mara watching her pups, the way her ears flicked every time one yelped or stumbled. Mara had already lost so much. The idea of her being parted from her puppies, after everything they'd survived, seemed unbearably cruel. One evening, as the shelter emptied out and the late sunlight streamed through the windows, Olivia sat with Mara, her fingers stroking the dog's worn fur through the bars. "You did everything right," she whispered. "You kept them alive. You trusted me. I wish I could promise you'll never have to worry again." Mara licked her hand in reply, her gaze soft and unguarded. The sound of playful chaos filled the air. River knocked over a water bowl. Ash dragged a towel into the food dish. Luna barked at a speck of dust. Scout, red sock in tow, wobbled after Olivia every time she stood to leave, as if begging her not to go. Olivia realized she was part of this family now, in ways she hadn't expected. The quiet moments with Mara, the laughter at the puppy's antics, the gentle rituals of care. These were stitching together the broken places inside her, just as surely as Mara's trust was healing the scars of abandonment. One morning, as she arrived at the shelter, Renee pulled her aside. "There's a line of applications for the puppies, and even a few for Mara, but none that want to keep them together. Just so you know." Olivia nodded, already knowing what her heart was whispering. Family isn't always about blood, she thought. Sometimes it's about surviving the same storm. Sometimes it's about not letting go. As she left that afternoon, Olivia looked back at Mara and her puppies. Scout nestled in the crook of his mother's belly. River and Ash rolling across the blankets. Luna staring after her with trusting eyes. She promised herself and them that she would fight to keep them together, no matter what it took. in that warm, sunlit shelter, surrounded by hope and healing, Olivia knew a new chapter had begun, not just for Mara and her puppies, but for herself as well. The world felt brand new as Olivia loaded the final box of supplies into her car. For days, her mind had whirled with questions and doubts. Could she do this? Was it selfish or naive to think she could handle 4 rambunctious puppies and their fiercely protective mother? But the choice had crystallized the moment she watched Mara and her pups huddle together in the shelter kennel, clinging to one another as strangers' voices echoed around them. She'd filled out the paperwork, heart pounding, and made a silent promise to every creature in that pile of fur: "You'll never be alone again." Renee snapped a photo as Olivia knelt beside Mara, holding out a treat. "Adoption days are my favorite," she said, grinning as the puppies tumbled over each other in a mad dash to investigate the car. Scout, still smaller than his siblings but determined as ever, dragged his red sock up onto the back seat and curled around it possessively. River leaped up beside him, while Ash and Luna jostled for the window spot. Mara hopped in last, a little uncertain, but when Olivia closed the door and looked back, she found Mara's gaze in the rearview mirror, anxious, hopeful, and, finally, content. The drive home was a symphony of puppy squeals, paws drumming on the seat, and Olivia's laughter, light, genuine, echoing through the car for the first time in years. By the time they arrived, the sun was slanting golden through the trees, painting everything in warmth. Olivia unlocked her front door, bracing herself for chaos, and let her new family pour inside. At first, the house felt too big for them. The rooms, so recently silent, filled with life in a rush. River racing down the hall, Luna slipping under the dining table, Ash immediately finding a forgotten tennis ball and launching it at a stack of magazines. Scout clambered onto the old armchair, red sock in his mouth, claiming it as his throne. Mara lingered near the door, scanning every corner with careful eyes, ears flicking as she checked for danger. Olivia knelt and stroked Mara's head. "It's home now, all of it. You're safe," she promised. There was no time for loneliness. Not with 4 puppies underfoot. The learning curve was steep and sometimes hilarious. On the first night, Luna vanished under the bed and refused to come out until Olivia lured her with peanut butter and gentle whispers. River claimed the laundry basket as his personal den, collecting socks, t-shirts, and a single muddy shoe. Ash developed a habit of collecting every squeaky toy in the house, piling them under the coffee table and barking at anyone who got too close. And Scout, brave little Scout, followed Olivia everywhere she went, into the kitchen, the bathroom, even the closet as she gathered towels for yet another spill. He never let his red sock out of reach. Mara slowly relaxed, her tail wagging more freely, her eyes losing their haunted edge. She found her favorite spot by the window, watching the street with a dignified air, occasionally barking at passing cars, as if to warn them that this was her kingdom now. Sometimes, when the puppies were asleep, Mara would nudge Olivia's hand, sigh deeply, and rest her head in Olivia's lap, a silent thank you, heavy with meaning. Days settled into a happy rhythm. Morning walks turned into parades. 4 puppies in mismatched collars, Mara leading with regal confidence, Olivia trying to keep the leashes from tangling. Neighbors stopped to watch the spectacle, laughing as the puppies darted in different directions or collapsed in a pile on the curb. Children asked to pet them. Volunteers from the shelter came by with treats and advice, and even the grumpiest neighbor, Mr. Harlan, softened when Ash trotted over and dropped a slobbery tennis ball at his feet. At home, the puppies' personalities bloomed. River was the adventurer, always plotting an escape from the yard or inventing a new game. Luna, gentle and shy, loved to watch birds from the windowsill, sometimes pressing her nose to the glass and fogging up the pane. Ash was the clown, forever tumbling and barking, always in the thick of every game. Scout, meanwhile, stuck close to Olivia, curling up beside her on the couch, dozing at her feet as she worked, always keeping his red sock tucked against his chest like a precious secret. Mara blossomed too. With every passing day, she grew stronger and more playful. She began to run in the yard, chasing her puppies or leaping for a tossed ball, her muscles filling out, her fur gleaming in the sunlight. Her laughter, deep, rumbling, full of relief, became a fixture of the household, as did her loving discipline when the puppy's mischief went a bit too far. Olivia's house, once so quiet, echoing with old memories and doubts, became a haven. She discovered a new purpose in the morning chaos and evening cuddles, in the small triumphs and silly messes. There were moments of exhaustion, of course. Luna's midnight howls, Scout's nervous barking at thunderstorms, the never-ending mountain of muddy paw prints and chewed shoes. But each challenge was met with patience and love, 1,000 tiny acts of care weaving them together as a true family. One evening, as the sun set in a blaze of pink and orange, Olivia sat on the back porch, a puppy sleeping in her lap and Mara at her feet. She watched River and Ash chase fireflies, Luna nap in the grass, and Scout doze with his red sock as a pillow. She felt the weight of loneliness, which had pressed on her for so long, dissolve into something brighter, lighter, and infinitely more alive. For the first time in years, Olivia understood what it meant to belong, not just to a place, but to a family forged by resilience, trust, and the courage to love again. The laughter, the mischief, the gentle thrum of paws on hardwood floors, all of it was proof that sometimes the bravest hearts find each other in the most unexpected ways. Spring thunderclouds gathered low over Houston, but inside Olivia's home, laughter and chaos ruled the day. The puppies had learned every inch of their new world. River barked at the window, daring the wind to try him. Ash was busy chewing the leg of the old coffee table, looking up every now and then as if to check whether he was still adorable enough to get away with it. Luna, ever gentle, curled in the patch of sunlight by the back door, eyes half closed. Scout, steadfast as always, lay by Olivia's feet with his red sock, one paw on her slipper as if to say, "I'm not letting you go anywhere." It was a happiness Olivia had never known before. She felt it in the simple things, the warm coffee she shared with Mara on the porch, the echoing barks of the puppies tumbling over each other, the satisfied sighs when she tucked the family into their makeshift beds each night. She even grew to love the small annoyances, the shoes chewed, the kitchen towel wars, the endless trails of muddy paw prints, because they were signs of life, proof that hope had moved in and unpacked its bags. But as the saying goes, storms follow sunshine, and it wasn't long before trouble found them. One rainy afternoon, just as Olivia finished mopping up after another puppy riot, the doorbell rang. She peered through the peephole to find a man in a crisp city badge, rain beating on his shoulders, standing on her stoop. His eyes swept the porch, noting the collection of chew toys and water bowls. Olivia's stomach twisted. "Miss Brooks, City Compliance Office," he announced, flashing an ID. "We've had some questions regarding animal rescue protocols. Mind if I come in?" Mara, sensing the tension, stood protectively between the door and the puppies. Olivia tried to steady her voice as she let the official inside. "Of course. How can I help?" He glanced around, scribbling in a notepad. "You adopted 5 dogs from city shelter intake records, all related. There are questions about zoning, licensing, and..." He paused as Scout came forward with his red sock, wagging his tail. Evidence of proper rescue authorization. Olivia's heart pounded. I have the adoption records, and I've followed every step the shelter gave me. Is there a problem? The official didn't answer at first. He knelt, studying the puppies as they tumbled across the living room, Luna climbing onto Mara's back, River chasing Ash. He took photos, recorded their microchip tags, and asked Olivia about her intentions, whether she planned to keep all 5 dogs, how she would afford their care, and if she understood city restrictions on multi-dog households. A pit formed in Olivia's stomach as the questions kept coming. What if they tried to split the family up? What if Mara was declared aggressive just for her protective stance? She tried to stay calm, explaining her routine, showing receipts for food and vet visits, even offering Scout's worn red sock as proof of their story. But the official remained stone-faced, jotting notes and promising a follow-up visit. As he left, he issued a warning. City ordinances are strict, Miss Brooks. Be ready to provide documentation and evidence for a review board. Any complaints from neighbors or evidence of neglect or nuisance could affect your case. We'll be in touch. The door clicked shut, leaving Olivia's heart racing. The puppies, sensing her fear, huddled close. Mara pressed against her, offering quiet support. Olivia tried to put on a brave face for them, but doubt gnawed at her. Was she enough? Could she protect the family she'd fought so hard to keep together? She spent the night preparing for battle. She organized every receipt, printed every shelter email, and filled out stacks of paperwork. She called Renee at the shelter, explaining the situation in a trembling voice. "Don't panic," Renee said, her tone steady and fierce. "We've seen this before. I'll come by in the morning and bring your case files. You did everything by the book, and if the city wants proof that these dogs are thriving, they can come see for themselves." The next day, Renee arrived with an armload of records and a determined look in her eye. Together, they assembled a portfolio of evidence: vet records, photos, adoption forms, testimonials from volunteers. Olivia's neighbors signed statements attesting to the puppy's good behavior and Mara's gentle nature. Even grumpy Mr. Harlan, coaxed by a grateful Ash and a plate of cookies, wrote a letter of support. "Those dogs are better neighbors than most people I've met." When the city official returned, Olivia was ready. She presented her binder, invited him to observe a feeding and playtime session, and welcomed him to question anyone he wanted. Mara sat calmly by her side, the puppies showing off their manners, at least as much as 4-month-old puppies could. The house was spotless, for once, and the air crackled with nervous energy and defiant hope. After 2 hours, the official closed his folder, his stern demeanor softening as Luna gently licked his hand. "You clearly care for these animals, Miss Brooks. That's what matters most. We'll file this as compliant, and I'll recommend no further action, unless the city council gets a sudden allergy to puppy kisses." Relief washed over Olivia so powerfully that her knees wobbled. She knelt beside Mara, burying her face in the dog's fur. Mara nuzzled her, the puppies joining the pile, a mass of warm bodies and thumping tails. Renee grinned from the doorway. "I told you," she said, wiping her eyes. "Love speaks louder than paperwork." That night, the whole family curled up together on the living room floor. Olivia, Mara, the puppies, and Scout's red sock, nestled among them like a badge of survival. The world outside was full of rules, but within these walls, courage, love, and loyalty had won the day. A gentle hush fell over Olivia's home in the weeks after the city official closed his folder and left them in peace. The fear that had once lurked in every creak of the floorboards or late-night knock at the door faded, replaced by a sense of belonging so rich that even the quiet felt full and alive. Olivia's life had transformed, not with the abruptness of a thunderclap, but in 1,000 soft ways. A mug of coffee cooling beside her as she watched the sunrise with Mara at her side. A line of muddy paw prints drying in the hallway. The deep, unfiltered laughter that came from chasing 4 puppies and never quite catching them all. Every day, as she watched her home pulse with the life and energy of Mara and the puppies, Olivia found herself thinking back to the first moment under that broken porch. The memory played in her mind in crisp detail. The dense fog, the smell of rain-soaked earth, Mara's haunted eyes reflecting the beam of her flashlight, the frail puppies shivering in the dark, clinging to each other and to hope. Olivia realized now that she'd gone to that house intending to do her job and move on. But something about that family had chosen her, demanded that she see past her own loneliness, past her doubts and rules, to the fierce and necessary work of rescue. And rescue, Olivia understood, wasn't just a single act. It wasn't lifting a puppy from under a porch or signing adoption papers. It was a series of choices, some small and quiet, some desperate and brave, that created a new beginning from scraps of despair. It was early mornings and late nights, learning to recognize each puppy's bark, tending wounds both visible and invisible. It was sharing her space and her heart with creatures who had every reason to distrust the world, and learning to let them heal her in return. There were setbacks and failures, moments when Olivia doubted her strength. Some nights, exhaustion caught her off guard, and she wondered if she was doing enough. The puppies didn't always get along. Sometimes Ash would nip at River, or Luna would hide under the bed for hours, trembling at a loud noise. There were ruined shoes and chewed furniture, emergency trips to the vet, and the endless chore of cleaning up after 4 growing pups. But Olivia learned to meet these moments not with frustration, but with patience and gratitude. Each small problem was proof they were alive, that hope was stronger than the scars they carried. Mara, too, changed in ways Olivia never could have predicted. The wary, skeletal dog, who had once shielded her puppies with a silent, desperate courage, was now the queen of their home. Her fur was thick and glossy, her step confident. She played with her pups in the backyard, sometimes breaking into joyful sprints that left Olivia breathless with awe. At night, she would nudge Olivia's hand, lean against her side, and sigh, a deep, contented sound that spoke of trust, of safety, of a future finally free from fear. Olivia began keeping a journal, writing down the lessons she learned from her new family. One entry, penned in the hush before dawn, captured what she felt most clearly. True rescue isn't just about saving a life. It's about letting yourself be changed. Letting broken things mend you too. Mara and her puppies didn't just need a home. I needed them. I needed their courage, their mess, their hope. Scout, ever the symbol of survival, became a living emblem of that lesson. The little pup who'd clung to his red sock through fever and fear, who'd learned to trust one gentle hand at a time, was never far from Olivia's side. No matter where she went, Scout would trail her faithfully, his red sock a constant reminder of how far they'd all come. That battered scrap of cloth, once nothing more than a forgotten child's toy, was now as precious as gold. It was proof that hope could be carried through the darkest places, that the threads of love and resilience could bind even the most broken hearts together. People in the neighborhood began to notice too. The family became a symbol of second chances. Neighbors who once barely said hello stopped to chat during morning walks. Children asked to pet the puppies. their laughter ringing out as River and Ash wrestled at their feet. Even grumpy Mr. Harlan, who had once glared from behind his curtains, brought over biscuits and dog treats. "Never thought I'd see the day," he muttered, ruffling Luna's ears as she napped in the yard. One evening, as the sky burned orange and pink and the puppies dozed in a tangled heap, Olivia found herself reflecting on the ripple effects of kindness. Maybe, she thought, the world changes not with big, heroic gestures, but with 1,000 quiet acts of compassion. A meal left for a hungry dog, a hand extended in trust, a promise kept through sleepless nights. She smiled at Mara, who stretched luxuriously at her feet, then at Scout, curled around his sock as if guarding a treasure. She realized in that moment that her loneliness had faded, not through any miracle, but through the daily courage to keep loving, keep caring, keep showing up. The journey of rescue was never one-sided. It was mutual, a mosaic of small, persistent kindnesses that saved them all. The red sock, now faded and frayed, hung by the door as a symbol, a badge not just of survival, but of hope renewed. It was a gentle reminder that in saving others, we sometimes save ourselves. There was a new kind of energy in Olivia's house as summer unfurled its warmth across Houston. It was a place reborn, windows thrown open to welcome the breeze, laughter echoing down the halls, the sound of paws on hardwood, the happy chaos of 4 growing puppies and their remarkable mother. Mara led her pups through the backyard each morning like a queen leading a royal parade, her stride bold and proud, her eyes clear, her fur gleaming in the sunshine. River and Ash would tumble across the grass, chasing each other in dizzying circles, while Luna stalked quietly through the dandelions, and Scout, always Scout, would pause at Olivia's feet, red sock clamped in his mouth, looking up as if to say, "Isn't this what hope looks like?" It was hard to imagine that only a few months earlier, the same house had been a sanctuary for silence and worry. Now, it pulsed with life at all hours. Mornings were a flurry of feeding bowls and untangling leashes. Afternoons were spent at the dog park or lounging in a patch of sun. Olivia's evenings, once solitary and heavy, now overflowed with bedtime rituals. Puppies dozing across her lap, Mara curled at her side, a gentle peace settling over them as the world outside slowed down. Olivia discovered joys she never knew existed. Watching River master his first game of fetch, seeing Ash finally win a wrestling match with Luna, listening to Scout's soft snore as he slept, his beloved sock always close. She laughed as Mara taught her pups the art of digging holes and scolded them for chewing up yet another throw pillow. Every challenge, vet visits, the occasional scuffle, the mountain of dog hair, became a shared adventure, another thread weaving them tighter as a family. Yet even in this happiness, Olivia never lost sight of the bigger picture. The story of Mara and her pups, of second chances, fierce loyalty, and the slow work of healing, had become more than just her own. Friends and neighbors who'd watched her transform from cautious loner to the dog lady on the corner came by to ask for advice or to share stories of their own pets. Children pressed their faces to the fence, hoping for a glimpse of the puppies tumbling in the grass. Renee and the shelter staff visited often, always bringing treats and praise. "You gave them what we dream of for every rescue," Renee told Olivia, her eyes misty. "Not just a safe place, but a true home." The red sock, once faded and nearly forgotten, became a symbol for the entire journey. Olivia placed it in a shadow box by the door, a small note tucked inside. Hope survives on the smallest things. Visitors would ask about it, and Olivia would tell them the story of Scout, the sickest puppy who had clung to life. The red sock his lifeline through hunger and fear. now a badge of all they'd overcome together. Sometimes in the evening, Olivia would sit on the porch, Mara at her side, and the puppies sprawled at her feet, and reflect on how much her life had changed. She remembered the person she'd been before, a woman moving through her days on autopilot, afraid to hope, afraid to care too deeply in a world that seemed too broken to fix. Now, she saw things differently. She saw how small acts of kindness could grow into something extraordinary, how compassion could ripple outward and change more than just one life. Her heart ached for every Mara and Scout still waiting, under porches, in shelters, behind locked gates, for someone to see them, to choose them, to believe in their possibility. She began to volunteer more at the shelter, speaking at adoption days and helping new families get started. She wrote letters to the city council, advocating for better rescue resources and more support for fosters. She started a little blog, Brave Paws, sharing stories, photos, and lessons learned from her family of 5. "Rescue is never one-sided," she wrote. "You save each other, you heal each other. That's what makes it worth every messy, uncertain step." With each post, each conversation, Olivia issued a gentle challenge to anyone listening. If you ever find yourself standing in front of someone in need, human or animal, don't turn away. You might just be the miracle they're waiting for. She encouraged people to notice the overlooked, to act with compassion even when it felt inconvenient or risky. She reminded them that hope didn't always roar. Sometimes it whimpered from the shadows, waiting for a hand to reach out. The house itself became a living testament to their journey. Walls once bare now displayed photos. Mara's first day home, the puppy's muddy paws after a rainstorm, Scout curled up with his red sock, River leaping for a frisbee. Friends and neighbors gathered for weekend cookouts, sharing food and laughter as the dogs chased each other under the Texas sky. Even Mr. Harlan, once the neighborhood curmudgeon, could be found dozing in a lawn chair with Luna snoozing at his feet. On the anniversary of the rescue, Olivia hosted a little party in her backyard. Renee came, along with shelter volunteers, neighbors, and even a few local reporters who'd followed the story. Olivia stood before them, Mara at her side, the puppies yipping in the grass, and spoke from the heart. "We're not heroes here," she said, her voice steady with pride. "We're just people who chose not to look away. Mara and her pups taught me that every act of kindness matters, that rescue is about believing in each other even when it's hard. If our story can inspire just one person to reach out, to notice, to help, then it's a story worth sharing." As the party wound down and the sun dipped below the horizon, Olivia gathered her family around her. Mara, strong and radiant. River, Ash, and Luna, tumbling in play. Scout, red sock in tow, nestling against her side. The world outside was still unpredictable, still full of challenges and heartbreak. But within the walls of this once-forgotten house, love had taken root and blossomed. And so the story of Mara, Scout, River, Ash, and Luna, the family built not by chance but by choice, continued. It was a story that didn't end with a rescue, but began with it. It was a reminder to anyone who listened that the true measure of humanity is in how we care for the voiceless and vulnerable, and that in choosing to save another, we so often save ourselves. Join our Brave Paws family. Like, share, and subscribe to help spread stories of hope, one paw, one act of kindness at a time.